Conviction and sensitivity to sin is one of the clearest signs that a person is walking on God's path, even if they do not fully realize it. It is a subtle, yet unmistakable stirring in the heart, a quiet awareness that certain actions, thoughts, or words are not aligned with God's will. This conviction is not imposed from the outside. It is not merely guilt created by social pressure or fear of punishment. It is an inner awareness, a God-given sensitivity that draws the soul's attention to its need for correction and refinement. Those who walk this path notice that when they fall short, they do not shrug it off or justify it easily. Instead, they feel a weight, a sense that something is out of alignment, and it compels them to turn back, to seek forgiveness, and to realign their lives with God's truth. This inner conviction manifests in different ways, depending on the individual and their experiences. Some feel it as a persistent unease after a wrong word or action, a restlessness that cannot be satisfied until they have addressed it. Others experience it as a subtle but constant awareness, a small voice whispering that something is not right, prompting reflection and self-examination. Unlike fleeting guilt that fades with time or denial, this conviction remains until it has been acknowledged and confronted. It serves as both a mirror and a guide, showing the areas where the heart needs to grow, where patterns of thought or behavior need to be reshaped according to God's standards. It is often quiet, almost imperceptible, yet it is relentless in its influence over the conscience of the person who is walking closely with God. The beauty of this conviction is that it does not seek to shame or destroy. Rather, it serves as a catalyst for transformation. God's Spirit uses this sensitivity to guide individuals toward holiness, to awaken desires for moral integrity, and to cultivate humility. When a person is aware of their own shortcomings and recognizes the need for God's help, they are open to growth in ways that those without such conviction often are not. This awareness fosters a posture of humility, reminding the individual that human strength alone is insufficient and that guidance and forgiveness must come from a higher source. In this way, sensitivity to sin is both a diagnostic and a corrective tool, revealing areas that require attention while simultaneously pointing toward the grace and mercy of God that makes restoration possible. Moreover, this conviction often leads to a deepening of prayer and reflection. Those who feel a strong sensitivity to their own moral failures find themselves turning more frequently to God, not out of fear, but out of a desire for alignment with His will. They seek clarity and strength to resist temptation, courage to confess mistakes, and wisdom to act rightly in the future. This ongoing dialogue with God strengthens the spiritual connection, creating a rhythm of introspection and divine guidance that becomes a central feature of their lives. The process is transformative because it trains the heart to recognize subtle deviations from righteousness, reinforcing an intimate awareness of God's presence and guidance. It is important to note that this conviction is often accompanied by a sense of discomfort with worldly norms that contradict divine principles. People walking this path may notice that behaviors considered acceptable or even celebrated by society stir a sense of dissonance within them. Where others may see harmless indulgences or moral compromises, the person sensitive to sin feels a tug, an inner hesitation, a subtle resistance. This is not self-righteousness, it is the moral compass given by God, calibrated to recognize the difference between fleeting pleasure and enduring righteousness. It enables individuals to navigate life with a heightened awareness of ethical and spiritual boundaries, providing a framework for decision-making that is aligned with divine guidance rather than cultural trends. Conviction and sensitivity to sin also foster accountability and a desire for community rooted in righteousness. Those who are aware of their own shortcomings often seek fellowship with others who are committed to moral integrity, not to boast or condemn, but to encourage, uplift, and sharpen one another in the pursuit of holiness. They value counsel and correction because they recognize the necessity of outside perspective in maintaining spiritual clarity. This accountability reinforces the conviction already present within their hearts. creating a supportive network in which spiritual growth is nurtured and moral vigilance is strengthened. This sensitivity frequently results in a heightened awareness of how one's actions affect others. The person walking God's path becomes attuned not only to personal failings, but also to the ways in which words, deeds, and attitudes influence the lives of those around them. They develop empathy and a conscientiousness that drives them to act with integrity, love, and thoughtfulness, understanding that sin is never merely a private matter, but has relational and spiritual consequences. In this way, conviction and sensitivity to sin cultivate a holistic moral consciousness, one that integrates personal accountability with a broader awareness of the divine standard that governs human interaction. Changing desires toward righteousness is a profound sign that someone is walking on God's path, even if they are not fully aware of it. It is a subtle transformation that begins in the heart and gradually permeates every area of life. This change does not happen overnight, nor is it always dramatic, but it is unmistakable to those who are attentive to their own spiritual journey. A person on this path begins to notice that the things they once craved or valued with intensity no longer hold the same appeal. The fleeting pleasures of the world, power, recognition, material gain, or indulgence in selfish desires begin to lose their grip, and a new set of priorities emerges. These are not superficial or imposed by external pressures, but rather a natural response to an inner awakening, a divine recalibration of the heart toward what is eternal and righteous. The process of changing desires often starts quietly, with small inclinations that seem almost incidental. One may feel an unexpected joy in acts of kindness, a sense of satisfaction in selflessness, or a newfound interest in spiritual matters. This gradual shift is a reflection of God's influence working within the individual, drawing them toward a deeper understanding of His will and a genuine love for what is good. The person begins to notice that their motivations are no longer entirely self-centered. They begin to think of the impact of their actions on others, on their own spiritual growth, and on their relationship with God. What once seemed trivial or inconsequential may now stir a sense of responsibility, reverence, or moral obligation. As desires change, there is often a simultaneous awakening to the emptiness of former pursuits. The individual may recognize that accomplishments, possessions, or worldly accolades, while not inherently wrong, do not satisfy the soul in the way that closeness to God does. They may feel a restlessness when they pursue things that once brought pleasure, sensing a lack of fulfillment or a subtle dissonance in their life. This recognition is not meant to induce guilt, but to serve as a guidepost, indicating the direction in which the heart is being led. The contrast between past desires and current inclinations highlights the transformative power of walking with God and underscores the gentle, yet profound reshaping of priorities that occurs over time. This change in desires also affects the way a person responds to temptation. As the heart aligns more closely with God's will, certain sins or indulgences that were once appealing now carry a weight of discomfort or hesitation. The individual may find themselves resisting behaviors they once embraced, feeling a subtle pull toward integrity, compassion, and holiness. This resistance is not necessarily rooted in fear of punishment or external consequences, but in an internal recognition that some paths lead away from the life God intends. The shift in desire becomes both a shield and a compass, protecting the heart from harm while guiding it toward choices that nurture spiritual growth. Furthermore, the transformation of desires often inspires a deeper hunger for spiritual knowledge and moral understanding. As worldly attractions fade, the individual may become increasingly drawn to scripture, prayer, meditation, and reflection. They seek wisdom not merely for intellectual satisfaction, but as nourishment for the soul, as guidance in navigating the complexities of life in a way that honors God. The pursuit of righteousness becomes a source of joy rather than obligation, a fulfillment that surpasses any temporary pleasure. This pursuit shapes daily decisions, habits, and relationships, creating a lifestyle that reflects a growing alignment with divine principles. Changing desires also manifests in the way one relates to others. As selfish cravings diminish and a longing for righteousness grows, the individual may find themselves more inclined to serve, forgive, and show compassion. Their interactions are colored by empathy and a desire to uplift others, reflecting a heart that has been reshaped by a higher standard of love and care. Relationships that were once transactional or superficial may now be approached with a sense of purpose, patience, and genuine concern for the well-being of others. The changing desires extend beyond personal fulfillment and into the realm of communal and relational responsibility, demonstrating the comprehensive impact of spiritual growth. In addition, this transformation fosters perseverance and resilience. As the heart's desires align more closely with God's will, the individual becomes increasingly motivated to endure challenges, remain steadfast in faith, and pursue moral integrity even in the face of difficulty. The focus shifts from fleeting satisfaction to long-term spiritual maturity, instilling a sense of purpose and direction that sustains the soul through trials and setbacks. The reshaped desires serve as both motivation and anchor, providing clarity and determination in moments of uncertainty, and reinforcing the ongoing commitment to walking the path that God has set. Enduring trials and resistance is a powerful indicator that a person is walking God's path, even when the journey feels difficult or confusing. Life on this path is not marked by ease or constant comfort. Rather, it is characterized by challenges that test faith, character, and perseverance. Those who are aligned with God's will often find themselves facing obstacles, misunderstandings, and opposition, not necessarily because they have done anything wrong, but because the path of righteousness is narrow and often countercultural. The world tends to resist what is holy and just, and anyone who chooses to follow God's ways will inevitably encounter friction. This resistance can take many forms: personal trials, relational conflicts, societal pressures, or internal struggles. Each challenge, however, serves a higher purpose, shaping the believer and strengthening their resolve. One of the first things to recognize is that trials on God's path are not arbitrary. They are not random misfortunes or meaningless hardships. Rather, they are instruments of growth designed to refine character and deepen dependence on God. Just as gold is purified in the fire, the soul is strengthened through adversity. The individual walking this path often discovers that these trials expose weaknesses, highlight areas that need transformation, and reveal the depths of faith that lie within. Through challenges, patience is cultivated, humility is reinforced, and resilience is built. The presence of resistance, therefore, is not necessarily a sign of failure or divine displeasure, but can be a confirmation that one is moving in the direction God intends. Trials often serve to clarify priorities and align desires with God's will. When circumstances are comfortable and life is free from struggle, it is easy to become complacent, to focus on superficial concerns, or to rely